Good evening, guys. How are you all doing? Welcome back to Historical Horses. Now, after the success of my last video, which was on Marion Coates and Stroller, I decided we needed another show jumping icon and, of course, another incredible woman. And that is none other than Pat Smythe. Wow, what a woman. I have been spending the last few days researching about her, and my goodness, her success was insane. I knew very little about her. I knew of her name, and I think I'd heard of the mare Tosca before, but that was it, nothing else. I didn't know anything about her results, nothing. Didn't even know what she looked like. And I have read so much, and my goodness, just remarkable. Like, I can't believe someone was so successful. The results she had with the horses that she rode was out of this world. And also at a time where our sport was very much dominated by men, she was at the forefront and the kind of trailblazer to, show that, women were just as good as men when it came to show jumping. And she, finally, we were allowed to compete in the Olympics and in Grand Prix and things like that. And she was right at the forefront of all that. So I hope you're going to enjoy this vlog. I have got lots of information. I've tried to cut it down a little bit. Otherwise, I felt like I'd be on here for absolute hours. But it's all fascinating. So I hope you enjoy. So Pat was born in 1928 in East Sheen, London, to Monique and Eric Smythe. Pat had two older brothers, Dickie and Ronald. Sadly, Dickie died aged 4. And actually, Pat nearly died herself. Age 5, she caught diphtheria, which is an acute and highly contagious bacterial disease. Nowadays, we have immunisation for it. But yeah, very nearly died. She was very lucky to survive that. Pat's mother, Monique, was a horsewoman herself. She was often sent horses in for breaking in and training. This included polo ponies as well. So you can sort of see where Pat's love for riding started out. But I feel like her love for show jumping came from one pony in particular, and that was a one-eyed pony called Pixie, who was an Arab cross Dartmoor, which I think is a very interesting combination. And although, like any typical small pony, initially quite tricky and quite naughty, she had some success at Richmond Royal Horse Show in the show jumping class there in 1939, and I feel like that really started off Pat's love for show jumping. Now, I'm probably going to butcher Pat's horse's name here. We know, if you followed my channel for a while, you'll know that I'm not the best at pronouncing things, but I'm going to go with Finality. Somebody might know exactly how you're meant to say it, but this was her first horse and she had huge amounts of success on this little mare. So the mare was sent by Johnny Trail, who often sent her mother Monique polo ponies to train. Now, this little mare was just 15 hands. She was thoroughbred cross, wait for it, a cart horse. It was like a milk float horse, and supposedly this milk float horse was quite naughty and used to kick things over, so it got sent to like stud early on, and the result was this incredible, plucky, brave little 15-hand mare who was just out of this world. Now, it would be impossible to go through all of Pat's successes because she had so many, not just in Britain, but across Europe and so on, huge amounts of success. She won so many top show jumping classes. So we might just pick out the odd one here and there. But one that I thought should be mentioned on lovely Finality was at White City Stadium, and what a stadium that was. I've mentioned it several times in previous vlogs, but can you imagine coming into that stadium, which was so huge, the whole crowd surrounding you, the show jumping course in front of you, on that little 15-hand mare, and she went on to win a class there, and she must have had goosebumps because it must have been a feeling like nothing else. With Pat and Finality having such success, they of course caught the British selector's eye. Now, sadly, because Pat and Finality were having such success, her owner, Johnny Trail, decided he wanted to sell her. Supposedly, he only bought the mare for £40 and he put her up for sale for £1,500. So, of course, he was making a huge profit. But this was a sort of huge disaster for Pat because, her earnings from winning these show jumping competitions, this was her livelihood. This was her income. This is how she supported her life. And so having Finality being put up for sale was really devastating for her. Now, the mare did sell, however, she didn't get on with her new owner quite as well as she had done with Pat, and after just a year, she was loaned back to Pat, which was just, must have been the most amazing feeling for Pat, being reunited with this little sort of pocket rocket of a mare, and straight away they were back into having winning success. In 1948, women still couldn't compete at the Olympics, so Pat had no choice in this but to lend finality to the British team for possible selection, which must have been horrendous. Let's be honest, if any of you own a horse, the thought of having to give your horse to someone else to ride, and she really didn't have a choice in this. And not only that, there was no compensation for this, so she ended up not having finality for something like 6 weeks, which meant she was missing out on sort of vital income from shows that she might have won. Again, she didn't get any money out of this. There was obviously also the risk that, you know, the mare could have been injured. At the end of the 6 weeks away, they actually decided they didn't want to pick her for the team. But even so, that's 6 weeks of someone else riding your horse that you maybe don't like the way they ride, 6 weeks more wear and tear on your horse. So it's really not a great thing, is it? Even though Pat had huge success, she also had some great sadness in her life. Before the age of 22, both her parents had died. So her father died of ill health first, and then later on her mother died in a car accident. And I feel like her mother especially was really important to her. They sort of did the horses together, they purchased horses together. So I imagine for Pat, just 22, having lost both her parents, that's a huge ordeal to go through. Even worse, on the day her mother died, she was phoned up saying that there was a sort of repayment on the house that they had purchased that needed to be paid off literally instantly, and Pat had no choice but to sell one of her horses, Leona, so that she could pay off this bill. Pat had many incredible horses over the years that she show jumped, and all with great success. However, I'm only going to speak about a few of them in this vlog, otherwise, like I say, we'll be here all night. Now, we've already spoken about finality, but Prince Hal was another very special horse to Pat. Now, she bought him for just £150. He was an ex-racehorse. I think he was a national hunt horse, a failed one. And she had huge success with him, won some massive shows, a lot of prize money. He was also a great puissance horse. Sadly, Pat also had to allow the British team to recruit Prince Hal, as in 1952, women still weren't allowed to compete in Grand Prix per FEI rules. Again, having to give your horse over to, I mean, it might not have been a stranger. She probably did know the members of the British team that were most likely going to ride him. But even so, you know, from a petite woman jumping this horse to knowing that some man is going to be riding him, it must have been the worst feeling ever. It must have been really upsetting. When Pat finally got Prince Hal back, he was not in good shape at all. He was very thin and very shaken by the whole experience. And that must have been so upsetting for her to see. It took her months and months of sort of rehabbing the horse to get his confidence back and to get him back in good shape to be able to compete him again. So once again, she was losing earnings from what she could have been winning on this horse because she had no choice but to allow him to be ridden by somebody else for the sake of the British team. I have just a list of just a few, and I mean a few, results that Pat achieved. She was on 13 winning Nation Cup teams. She had 4 Ladies European Championship titles, 8 National Championship titles. She was lead show jumper at Hoy's numerous times, and many international wins on a variety of different horses. And she competed a lot abroad as well as in this country. Tosca was a mare that Pat had great success on, and she was the only horse name that I recognised when I started researching this. This mare was known as a show jumping machine. She competed the mare a lot abroad, and actually when she retired this mare from show jumping, she bred 8 or 9 foals from her, but from what I gather, none of them were anywhere near as successful as their mother. Flanagan was the horse that partnered Pat to finally getting to the Olympic Games. So in 1956, Pat went to the Olympics, and here she only went and blooming achieved a bronze medal with the team, which I think is just an incredible result. She had been waiting years and years and years to compete at the Olympics. She was ready 8 years ago to be there, but because of the rule of not allowing women to compete, she didn't get the chance. But finally, when she did get to compete there, she did exceptionally well, like I say, getting a bronze with the team, and I think she was 10th individually as well. So such an amazing result. She actually went to the Olympics 4 years later, and there she came 11th individually, but the team didn't get placed. They didn't finish, so somebody must have had a bit of a disaster. Pat was every small girl's idol back then. She was beautiful, she was successful, and not just in show jumping. This woman could play guitar and piano incredibly well. She also wrote 44 books. I think it could have been more, but from what I've managed to research online, 44 books, 11 of those before the age of 30. This woman was insane. She's competing all over the place with lots of different horses, and in her spare time, she's writing all these books, which she also had great success with. And you just think, that's just, how did she manage it all? She also came third in the first ever Sports Personality of the Year. And I do wonder if she might have come second or third the year after, but sadly they don't have the results anymore, which seems bonkers, doesn't it? But yeah, for the 2 years after, there are no results for second and third. So I wouldn't be surprised if she'd got placed again. She was also Sportswoman of the Year at least twice from what I gather. She was also a bit of a celebrity. I mean, back then, I've said before in the previous vlog with Marion Coates and Stroller, show jumping was such a big deal to the nation, and she was a celebrity. You know, she was having so much success that everybody loved her, and understandably so. Even after Pat retired from show jumping, she still played a very important role in British show jumping. I believe she was even a chef de keep for a few years. Pat sadly passed away in 1996, and having done this research on her, what an incredible woman she was. So determined, so courageous. I got that real feeling that she just never gave up. She never gave up. The fact that she got so much success out of so many different horses just shows her talent and her ability. But also I believe she was a real trailblazer for women in our sport. She was right there at the beginning when we finally allowed women to compete in the Olympics. We finally allowed women to compete at Grand Prix under FEI rules. And she sort of made this pathway for the rest of us. I think she's my idol now, to be quite honest. Just phenomenal. And I know I repeat the same words over and over again because I just don't know what else to say. This woman was one in a million, wasn't she? She was remarkable. And I have loved every second of researching and finding more out about her. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope I haven't waffled on for too long. Yes, please like and comment below. I love reading your comments, and see you again very soon.